I thought she was just passing through my life, until the night she looked at me, touched my hand, and said, "You think this is just a moment? You have no idea what it means to me." It started on an evening that wasn't supposed to matter. One of those quiet hours at the edge of the day when everything feels slightly out of focus. The cafe was nearly empty, washed in warm amber light that softened every corner. I had come in just to escape the noise outside, to breathe for a moment before heading home. I didn't expect anything unusual. Definitely not her. I noticed her before I fully understood why. She stood near the shelves at the back, skimming through a stack of books someone had left out. There was something steady, unhurried, almost graceful about the way she moved, like the world didn't rush her the way it rushed everyone else. She had that quiet confidence older women carry, without trying, a kind of calm that draws your eyes before your mind catches up. She didn't look at me at first. She simply existed in the space with a kind of presence that filled the room without making noise. The soft scrape of her chair, the delicate shift of her hair as she tucked a strand behind her ear, the faint warmth of her perfume drifting just far enough to reach me. All of it pulled me in before I even heard her voice. When she finally turned, her eyes met mine with a brief, almost curious softness. Not flirtatious, not surprised, just aware. She held that gaze a moment longer than a stranger normally would, as if she was quietly reading something about me she wasn't expecting to find. I looked away first. A few minutes later, I dropped my pen. It rolled toward the floor, stopping just short of her shoes. She bent down to pick it up before I could reach for it. That's when it happened, the touch. She extended the pen to me, and when I reached for it, her fingertips brushed against the inside of my palm. Not a dramatic touch, not intentional, but warm, incredibly warm. Her skin was smooth, steady, with a gentleness that didn't match the quick rush of energy it sent through me. Most people would pull their hand back immediately. She didn't. Her eyes flicked up to mine again, this time softer, deeper, like she'd just felt the same strange jolt I had and was quietly acknowledging it. Her lips curved slightly, not into a smile, but into something thoughtful, something that hinted at recognition. "Here," she said quietly. Her voice was low, warm, the kind of tone that settles into you rather than fades. I took the pen, but I couldn't shake the small, unexpected warmth her touch left behind. It lingered longer than it should have, in my hand, in my chest, in the stillness between us. Nothing else happened. No dramatic moment. No bold words. Just the two of us standing there in the quiet golden light, something shifting gently, almost invisibly between us. A beginning neither of us planned, but both of us felt. I didn't expect to see her again so soon. Life rarely aligns moments so neatly, but that week it did. It was late afternoon when I walked into the small library attached to the community center. I'd only planned to return a book, maybe browse for something new. But the moment I stepped inside, I felt the same warm stillness I'd felt in the cafe. And then I saw her. She stood by the tall windows, flipping through a book with her glasses perched low on her nose. But it wasn't the sight of her that struck me. It was the expression she wore. Soft, lost in thought, like she had drifted somewhere far past the words in front of her. She noticed me before I said anything. Her eyes lifted, and I watched her whole posture shift, subtle but real. Her shoulders relaxed. Her lips lifted in a small, quiet smile that wasn't forced or polite, just natural, like she genuinely didn't mind seeing me again. "You again," she said lightly, tilting her head just a little. There was warmth in her voice I hadn't earned yet. "Didn't expect to run into you here," I replied. She slipped her glasses off, closing the book with one hand and holding it casually against her chest. "I come here when I need a little silence," she said. "And maybe when I need a reminder that the world isn't as fast as it feels." There was something in that line, something personal, something she hadn't meant to reveal, but that fell out naturally, like she trusted me more than she intended. We ended up walking slowly between the shelves, talking about books, routines, and how strange it is to meet the same stranger twice in a week. Her voice changed as she talked. It softened, slowed, like she was finally stepping out of whatever guarded space she normally lived in. At one point, she laughed at something I said, a soft, genuine laugh that made her eyes crease at the edges. As the sound faded, she reached out without thinking and touched my forearm. The touch was feather-light but warm and steady. Her hand stayed there for just a second longer than casual conversation required. Just long enough for me to feel her thumb graze the sleeve of my shirt. Just long enough for her to realize she'd done it, and still not pull away immediately. When she finally did, her fingers lingered in the air, almost reluctant. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "I do that sometimes. Touch people when I feel comfortable." "Comfortable? With me?" She exhaled softly, and for the first time, I saw the quiet vulnerability beneath her calm exterior. Not uncertainty, more like someone who had forgotten what it felt like to be at ease around another person and was surprised to feel it again. Before we left, she tapped the back of my hand lightly with her fingertips, intentional this time, and said, "It's nice talking to you." Unexpected, but nice. That tiny touch stayed with me long after she walked away. And if the warmth in her eyes meant anything, it stayed with her too. The third time we met wasn't planned. It wasn't even convenient. It just happened the way certain moments in life seem to align themselves without asking permission. It was late, the kind of late where the streets are mostly quiet and only a few warm windows glow in the distance. I had stopped by the community center again, half out of habit, half out of a quiet hope I refused to acknowledge. When I stepped inside, the entire place was nearly dark except for one room at the end of the hallway. Soft yellow light spilled through the cracked door. And there she was, sitting on a stool, sorting through a stack of old photographs spread across a table. Her hair fell loosely over her shoulder, lit by the warm overhead lamp. She looked peaceful, almost surrounded by her own little universe. She noticed me right away. "You're here late," she said, her voice gentle with a surprise that sounded closer to relief. I shrugged. "Could say the same about you." She smiled softly, then gestured for me to come closer. "I was just trying to organize these for the center. Didn't think anyone would wander in this late." As I stepped into the room, the quiet settled differently, thicker, warmer, as if the air itself held its breath. I sat beside her, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. She didn't shift away. Instead, she angled slightly toward me, an invitation so subtle most people would have missed it. We started talking, not loudly, not quickly, just the kind of slow, drifting conversation that happens only when two people feel strangely safe around each other. At some point, she leaned over to show me a picture, and our hands grazed. Just barely. But unlike the first time, we both felt it immediately. She didn't pull back. Her fingers lingered near mine, close enough that the heat of her skin drifted across my knuckles. Her breathing changed too. Just a small hitch, but enough to tell me she felt the same sudden closeness shifting between us. When she finally looked up, her face was only inches from mine. The warm lamp light traced the curve of her cheek, the softness around her eyes, the slight vulnerability she wasn't trying to hide anymore. The silence stretched, not awkward, not tense, but heavy with something unspoken. "You are unexpectedly easy to be around," she murmured. It wasn't a confession, but it wasn't casual either. I swallowed, trying to mask the way my pulse jumped. "You make it easy." She exhaled softly, a small, quiet breath that reached me as surely as her touch did. And then it happened again. Our hands brushed, this time slower, more deliberate. Her fingers slid lightly over mine, like she was testing something she had been afraid to acknowledge. Neither of us moved away. For a long moment, we just sat there, our hands resting close enough that a tiny shift would have intertwined them completely. She glanced at our hands, then at me. The look she gave me wasn't confused or uncertain. It was aware, deeply aware, as if she had been trying to pretend something wasn't happening between us, and suddenly she couldn't pretend anymore. That was the night the tension stopped being something we imagined and became something we could feel, warm, undeniable, and quietly pulling us closer. For a few days after that night, she vanished from the spaces where I usually found her. Not intentionally, not in a dramatic, avoidant way, but in a way that felt quieter, heavier, like she was pulling herself back behind an invisible line she hadn't meant to cross. The first time I saw her again, she was in the cafe near the window, stirring her tea with slow, absent circles. Her posture looked composed, perfectly put together, but there was a tightness in her shoulders I hadn't seen before. A kind of caution, a kind of distance. She noticed me before I sat down, and for a heartbeat I wondered if she would smile the way she used to. Instead, she offered a polite, small nod, friendly enough, but with something missing. "Hey," I said softly. "Hi," she replied. The warmth was there in her voice, but buried under a layer of restraint. I sat across from her, and she forced a smile, the kind meant to reassure both of us. "You're here early today. I could say the same about you." She looked down at her cup, exhaling slowly. I needed some quiet. I didn't push. I didn't ask why things suddenly felt different. Because even without words, I could feel the shift. She was protecting herself from something she didn't know how to explain. We made small talk at first. Safe topics. Safe smiles. But the space between us felt heavier than it should have. At one point, she reached for a napkin at the same time I did, and our hands barely touched. This time, she froze. Not because she didn't want it, but because she did. Her fingers pulled back quickly, almost too quickly, and her gaze flicked away. "Sorry," she murmured. "I didn't sleep well. I'm a little scattered." But her voice wasn't scattered. It was conflicted. She tried to distract herself, asking about my day, my plans, my work. Her eyes kept drifting toward me and then pulling back, like she was fighting an internal battle I wasn't meant to see. "You seem distant," I finally said quietly. She hesitated, a long, careful pause. "No, I'm just thinking about." Her breath caught, and she pressed her lips together before answering. "About lines, boundaries, the ones I'm supposed to have." She gave a soft, almost self-mocking smile. "And the ones I clearly don't." Her honesty didn't come out dramatically. It came out tired, like someone admitting a truth they'd been carrying alone. I leaned back slightly. "I'm not asking for anything from you." "I know," she whispered. "That's the problem. You're not asking, and I still feel myself wanting things I shouldn't." The vulnerability in her voice hit deeper than any confession could have. Then something shifted. A man walked past our table, bumping slightly into my chair, and instinctively she reached out, her hand landing lightly on my wrist. The moment her skin touched mine, her breath faltered. She didn't pull away. Not this time. Her thumb brushed my wrist so gently it felt more like hesitation than touch. But it was enough to reveal everything she had been trying to hide. She looked up at me, uncertainty flickering in her eyes, but beneath it, warmth. Quiet, undeniable warmth. She was stepping back with her mind, but her heart kept leaning forward. And for the first time, she seemed to realize just how impossible it would be to keep pretending nothing was happening. The next time we met, it wasn't in a place filled with people or noise. It was somewhere quieter, softer, the kind of environment where emotions don't hide behind distractions. She was in a small community garden behind the center, kneeling near a row of fading plants, gently brushing soil from her hands. The late afternoon light settled around her like a warm veil, turning her hair gold at the edges. She looked up when she heard my footsteps, and this time, she didn't pretend not to feel anything. There was no guarded smile, no polite distance, just a soft exhale, like seeing me relieve something she hadn't said out loud. "You always arrive when I need a break," she murmured, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Even when I don't realize I need one." I sat beside her on the low garden bench. She didn't move away. In fact, she shifted closer, as if the space next to me was the only place she felt steady in that moment. "What's wrong?" I asked gently. She hesitated. Her fingers played with the hem of her sleeve the way someone does when they're trying to hold themselves together. "It's nothing dramatic," she finally said. "Just life." She laughed softly, but it wasn't amusement. Responsibilities. Expectations. The constant feeling that I have to be the strong one for everyone. Her voice cracked just faintly at the end, the kind of crack you hear only when someone trusts you enough not to hide it. Without thinking, I reached out and let my hand rest lightly over hers. She didn't startle. She didn't pull back. She looked down at our hands for a moment, and I saw her chest rise with a slow, emotional breath. "You don't always have to be strong," I said quietly. She closed her eyes for a moment. Like the words had reached a part of her she kept buried. When she finally spoke again, her voice had softened almost to a whisper. "You make it feel easy to stop pretending." She shifted closer, so close her shoulder gently pressed against mine. I felt the warmth of her through the thin fabric of her shirt, steady and grounding. When she turned slightly toward me, her knee brushed against my leg, and she didn't correct it. Then, slowly, intentionally, she laced her fingers through mine. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't hesitant. It was deliberate, a quiet choice. Her thumb moved lightly across my knuckles, a soft back-and-forth motion that said more than any confession could. Her touch felt warm, tender, almost fragile, but the way she held my hand was sure. "I haven't felt this safe with someone in a long time," she whispered. "Maybe ever." I didn't speak. I just let my thumb brush the back of her hand, matching her gentle rhythm. She leaned her head slightly toward me, close enough that I felt her breath against my shoulder, soft and warm. For a moment, the world outside the garden didn't exist. No doubts, no boundaries, no fear. Just her hand in mine, steady and trusting. And without saying it directly, she let me see what she'd been holding back, that she wanted this. Wanted us. Not as an accident, but as something real. The moment happened on a night that felt softer than others. The kind of night where even the air seems to move slower. She had invited me to help her sort through a few things at her home office. Nothing dramatic or intimate by intention. But from the second I stepped inside, I could sense something different in her. Her house was quiet, warmly lit, carrying the faint scent of jasmine and old books. She moved through the space with an ease I hadn't seen in weeks, as if letting me into her home had loosened something inside her, something she had tried holding back. After a while, we migrated from the desk to the window seat, where the curtains swayed gently in the evening breeze. A soft glow from a nearby lamp painted her features in warm gold. She sat close, her knee brushing against mine, and neither of us made the slightest effort to shift away. We talked about small things, work, the garden, a recipe she'd tried and failed at. It was ordinary conversation, yet it felt heavier, fuller, threaded with tension neither of us wanted to break too soon. At one point, she paused mid-sentence, her eyes drifting to my hand resting beside her thigh. Slowly, she placed her hand over mine, palm warm, fingers soft. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't hesitation. It was an acknowledgement, a choice. I turned my hand and let my fingers slide between hers, and she exhaled, a breath that sounded like a mix of relief and surrender. She looked out the window, as if gathering courage, then turned toward me. Her face was close enough that I could see the faint shimmer in her eyes, the small quiver of emotion at the corner of her mouth. "You have no idea how long it's been since I let someone this close," she whispered, voice barely above the quiet rustle of the curtains. "I'm not trying to rush you," I said softly. She shook her head. "It's not that. It's everything else." Her free hand rose slowly, almost hesitantly, before resting lightly against my chest, right over my heartbeat. Her fingers barely pressed, yet the warmth of her touch sank deep, grounding me in that moment. "You think this is just a moment?" she said quietly, her eyes locked onto mine. The room fell still. The air, the night, everything around us seemed to pause. She leaned closer until her forehead rested gently against mine. Her breath mingled with mine, warm, uneven, carrying everything she wasn't yet saying aloud. "You think it's simple," she whispered, her thumb brushing the fabric of my shirt over my heart. "But you have no idea what it means to me." The words weren't dramatic. They weren't rehearsed. They came out trembling, real, filled with a vulnerability she'd been fighting for weeks. I didn't respond right away. I just let my hand rise to her cheek, brushing a soft strand of hair back behind her ear. She closed her eyes when my fingers touched her skin, leaning into the contact as though it was something she'd been missing without realizing it. When she opened her eyes again, the distance between us wasn't just small, it was non-existent. Her voice dropped to the faintest whisper. I feel something with you I didn't expect to feel again. The moment wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was everything, the quiet, undeniable shift from wanting to choosing. The days that followed didn't rush anything. They didn't need to. What happened between us that night wasn't a confession demanding answers. It was a quiet promise, a shift in the air, a shared understanding that neither of us wanted to undo. We found ourselves together again on a soft Sunday morning, the kind where time feels slower and the world seems to breathe differently. She'd invited me to the community center early, before anyone else arrived. The sky outside was still pale and sleepy, and the room smelled faintly of fresh coffee and the flowers she had arranged near the window. She was already there when I arrived, sitting on the old couch by the bookshelves, her legs tucked lightly beneath her and a mug warming her hands. When she looked up, the smile that rose on her face wasn't shy or cautious or conflicted. It was warm, certain, like she had finally stopped fighting something that was always meant to be gentle. "You're early," she said softly. "So are you." She patted the space beside her, and when I sat down, she moved closer on instinct. Not hesitation, not secretive, but open. Her knee pressed lightly against mine. Her shoulder leaned into my arm, just enough to feel her warmth. For a while, we didn't talk. She just rested her head against my shoulder, letting the quiet settle around us like a soft blanket. Her hair brushed my jaw, and every small movement of her breathing felt like she was slowly syncing her heartbeat with mine. "It feels different now," she finally said, voice low. "What is this?" She gently squeezed my hand, her fingers already intertwined with mine. "Being near you. I'm not second-guessing everything anymore." I ran my thumb over the back of her hand, slow and steady. "I'm glad." She exhaled, not a sigh, but a release, as though she'd been holding something inside her chest for far too long and was finally letting it go. A few minutes later, she shifted slightly, turning toward me. The light from the window softened her features, giving her a peaceful glow I hadn't seen before. She reached up, lightly wrapping her fingers around my chin, guiding my gaze toward hers. "You know," she whispered, brushing her thumb gently along my jawline, "I don't usually let people stay this close. You don't have to explain." "I want to," she said, leaning her forehead to my cheek in a tender, lingering touch. "Because it feels right. You feel right." The words settled between us like something delicate and sacred. Not rushed, not dramatic, just real. She pulled back only slightly, enough to press a soft, warm kiss to my cheek. It wasn't quick. It lingered, full of certainty and quiet affection, her hand still resting against my face as if anchoring the moment. When she leaned away, her eyes held mine with a gentleness that felt like its own kind of promise. "I don't know where this goes," she murmured, "but I'm not afraid of it anymore." We sat there together, her head resting on my shoulder, her hand woven with mine, our legs brushing in a steady rhythm. And for the first time, nothing felt uncertain. No hesitation, no boundaries pulling us apart. Just a calm, warm certainty that whatever this was, we were choosing it together. And that was enough.